breaking and entering, drunk and disorderly, law and order. A former prosecutor and a defence lawyer, not your typical pairing. And the result? Conversations about crime and punishment that are guaranteed to get you thinking.
Welcome to Justice Matters, a weekly podcast. Our episodes are available every Monday on Apple Podcast, Spotify and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Enjoy the episode. This episode contains descriptions of murder and cannibalism. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, Lizzie.
Hello, Joe.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well.
That's good.
I want to talk about a case which I'm sure lots of people listening have heard of, but might have forgotten the facts because it's an old case and the name sort of trips off the tongue.
Well, and even if people don't know the name, it's likely they would think of, yes, that rings a bell.
Yes.
When we talk about the content.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I want to talk about Dudley and Stevens. Now, I always get this confused with Donahue and Stevens.
Oh, do not mix up the two.
No, Donahue and Stevens, the snail in the bottle case.
Duty of care.
Duty of care torts case.
Not my area of expertise or necessarily interest.
No. And Donahue and Stevens is Donahue v. Stevens versus Stevens. Dudley and Stevens is actually the Queen against Dudley and Stevens because they are both the co-defendants in a murder.
Just what we love.
I know.
I was going to say good juicy murder. That might be particularly apt.
Wow. Well, that would be a pretty bad pun once we get into what it's all about. Dudley and Stevens, tried for murder. I won't tell you what happens.
No.
I won't spoil it.
No.
But the case is reported in the Queen's Bench Division at 1884. If anyone's poking through a law library and want to pull it out.
Well, and we should say, yes, you heard that right. 1884.
1884.
Very old case.
Old case. And when you hear the facts, you'll understand that it probably wouldn't happen nowadays or would be much less likely to happen nowadays.
You would hope not.
So the other thing is it's still relevant today in that it is authority for the proposition that the defence of necessity cannot be used in a murder case. Wow.
Common law necessity.
Common law, yes, sorry. I use necessity because I know not everybody is a Queenslander and we call it extraordinary emergency here, but yes, it's a common law defence of necessity, which is a complete defence.
I thought you could use the defence of emergency.
In a murder case?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Anyway, I suppose maybe it depends on the emergency.
In a
death? Manslaughter might be different. Murder.
Yes. All
right, but so the defence of the common law, defence of necessity, I've actually used it before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's a complete defence. In a case where a woman who had her licence suspended and her mother was sick, and so she drove her mother to the hospital and the police picked her up and charged her with the offence of unlicensed driving.
On the way to the hospital?
Yes.
So they stopped them?
They stopped them and then they gave her the ticket and then just let her go and she just kept driving to the hospital. Anyway, they then prosecuted her. She argued the defence of necessity successfully.
Can I just, not that it's relevant, but that just reminded me of a video I saw of a bail hearing in the US.
Yeah.
And it must have been during, or maybe during COVID, I don't know why, but it was a video link.
Oh, yeah.
And it was for driving offences,
yes.
One of them being unlicensed driving. And the accused rang into the court.
Oh, that's right.
And the judge was looking at him and then he said, excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, where are you calling from? And he said, my car. And he said, are you driving? He goes, oh, sorry, I'll just pull over. I was like, oh, my Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I've known people who have their licenses suspended who walk out of court, get in their car and drive home.
I know. Well, and people who've had their license suspended absolutely, which actually only means 5 years, but it's like the fifth time they've had it suspended absolutely. If you're going to drive, you're going to drive. They don't care.
I'm hearing you. So the defence of necessity, complete defence, comes down to, in terms of a murder case, are you entitled to kill somebody else to save yourself? And the answer is, at law, you are not. But that does throw up some really particularly difficult legal/moral questions in cases like Dudley and Stevens. So I'll get into the facts of the case.
All right.
Now, interestingly, so I said it's reported in the Queen's Bench Division reports in 1884. It actually also occurs in 1884. The entire thing, the offence occurs, it goes all the way through the court system and is reported all in the same year. Isn't that incredible how
what
quickly?
We call speedy justice.
I know, things moved quickly back in the day. All right, so it's a cannibalism case. I'll just give a quick overview. It's 4 men in a lifeboat on the high seas, and they, what happens is one of them is then killed and the others in the boat eat him and drink his blood because they are dying of thirst. Oh. And then they're subsequently rescued, and then 2 of them are put on trial for the murder. So 1883, an Australian man, who also happens to be a lawyer, purchases a boat or a yacht in England. So he's in Australia, it's in England, he needs to get it to Australia. So he finds a crew, or somebody organises a crew to sail it to Australia. Now, I describe it as a yacht. It's pretty big for a yacht, not big for a ocean-going ship.
I know. You seem to think, though, that we're all seafaring folk like you.
Jeepers. Well, I'm not sure I could be described as a seafaring folk, but I like boats. But everyone knows what a yacht is. It's got a mast and sails.
Yeah, I think they're quite big.
Yeah, they are big, yeah.
So it's bigger than a yacht?
Well, it's 52 foot, which is 16 metres.
Have you seen the boat moored at Southport at the moment? It belongs to the Snapchat guy.
Oh, wow, I haven't.
And apparently it costs like $2 million a month in expenses.
Yes. I suspect that's called a mega yacht.
Possibly.
As opposed to...
Not what this guy had?
Not what Jack Want bought,
right.
An Australian lawyer. He just wanted a 16-metre yacht.
Okay.
And it was called the Mignonette.
Oh.
Yeah, French name. So he organises, or somebody organises for a crew to sail it to Australia. Now, it's not really an ocean-going yacht. You know, it's not really, certainly not made for crossing the Atlantic or the Pacific, you know, which is what you would have to do. So if you're sailing from Britain or England. And so they actually take some time to find a crew who's willing to do it. They end up.
So how would you get the boat? Well,
you can do it. I mean, you just don't want to run into any big storms.
Right.
So.
Bit dicey.
Yeah. I mean, people have sailed, you know, somebody sailed across the Pacific in an open boat.
Yeah.
Little, you know, dinghy. So it can be done.
Okay.
It's just pretty dangerous because if you run into trouble.
You're a little boat in a big ocean.
Yes.
Yes.
So they get 4 men. Obviously, Tom Dudley, he's the captain. Edwin Stevens, Edmund Brooks, and Richard Parker. Richard Parker is the cabin boy. He's only 17.
Oh.
The others are older.
That's no good already.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's only 4 of them, and it is a multi-masted yacht. So, you know, that takes a fair bit of work to obviously rig sails and put them up, put them down, you know, get them right. So 4-man crew is doable, but, you know.
Tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they leave Southampton in England on the 19th of May, 1884, bound for Sydney.
It sounds like the voyage 100 years earlier.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's just over 100 years since the first fleet arrived in Australia. That's right. So 5 July, so what's that, just a bit over 2 weeks later, the Mignonette runs into a gale, it's described as. I would have called it a storm. I don't know the difference between the two. And at the time that occurs, they are 2,600 kilometres from land.
Oh, that is actually terrifying.
That is a long way. Now, they're doing all right in the gale. It's not they're handling it, but it's at night. And so the captain wants to let them all get some rest and eat some dinner. So he, what's called, hoves to. So that means that I think he drops a sea anchor, and a sea anchor is an anchor that doesn't go all the way to the bottom. It just floats, but it slows your boat down. But what it also does is your boat then will turn into the wind. So it's always facing the direction of the wind, which means it's facing the direction of the waves, assuming the waves are coming in the same direction as the wind, which they mostly do.
And is that a good thing?
Well, it allows everybody to not have to keep working the rudder and the sails, and everyone can sort of just take a break.
But why do you want to face the waves?
Well, for wind on sails, you need an angle. If you're facing directly into the wind, the sails don't pick up the...
All right. See, I don't understand any of this. All right. So he had a plan.
And it was all tickety-boo, and nobody seemed to suggest he did the wrong thing. What they weren't expecting was a wave that wasn't travelling in the same direction as the wind, which does occur sometimes. And so they hit side on by a wave, which immediately breaks the bulwark, part of the boat that keeps it afloat, the side, and it immediately starts to sink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just reminds me of A Perfect Storm, that George Clooney movie.
George Clooney film where they go up that gigantic wave.
It's terrifying as well.
Yeah, never to be seen again. Well, these people are seen again. They all four of them managed to get into the lifeboat, and they managed to get the 2 tins of turnips.
Oh, God.
No fresh water, unfortunately. But they also get the navigational equipment.
Turnips.
2 tins of turnips.
And navigation.
Navigational equipment.
Well, not quite what I'd call the essentials, but anyway.
No, they had 5 minutes. Between the wave hitting the side and the boat going under
really
was 5
quick.
Minutes, yes.
Wow.
So yes.
Okay.
So they jump on board, but the problem is that the dinghy or the lifeboat, because it's such a small yacht, the Minuet, its lifeboats aren't big, and it's actually not a great lifeboat.
Okay.
Anyway, so they jump into the lifeboat, and then they are...
Is it still nighttime?
Still nighttime. Sun comes up. They are in the middle of a very big ocean with no possibility that they are going to be rescued. I mean, you hope for rescue, and you hope that boats are going to sail past, but you have no idea whether they are or not.
But when you say no possibility, as in there were no boats on the horizon.
No boats on the horizon, yeah. And I'm not sure they were in a sort of a standard shipping lane or something. They were pretty...
Okay.
Well, I mean, they obviously hoped they would get rescued, hence trying to stay alive.
Yes.
But I don't think they, I mean, in this age of sail when, people are sailing all over the world,
yeah,
this,
it's a bit
as
different.
but as we'll see, this kind of thing happens to sailors, not infrequently.
Oh, gosh.
They then wait a few days. They don't immediately eat the turnips. They try and catch some rainwater. They're not successful. But it's not until a few days later. So what time would they go on the 5th? They wait till, I think, the 9th, 7th or the 9th, so a couple of days before they even eat anything. And then they open up the first tin of turnips and they share that out. That lasts a couple of days because they eat it very slowly.
Because it's gross.
I mean, I think they're getting pretty hungry by this stage.
Yeah.
When they've been afloat 4 or 5 days, they see a turtle. They manage to pull the turtle on board and kill it.
Oh.
That then gives them enough food for about, another week.
Just raw turtle flesh?
Raw turtle flesh plus turnips because they eat it with the other tin of turnips.
The tea diet.
Yeah. One of the reasons that they want the turtle is because they want to drink its blood because they are so thirsty because they didn't get any fresh water. But it says that the turtle's blood was contaminated with seawater. I don't know how that occurs.
Maybe it's the way they killed it.
Maybe it was they killed it or something. So they can't really get much
I wouldn't have thought a poor
from it.
little turtle would have had much anyway.
Sea turtle, I think it's probably a reasonable size.
Oh, maybe it was big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it was massive. I mean, they're not in a big boat, but I mean, it's big enough to provided a kilo and a half of meat or something.
I cannot actually imagine being in that position.
Haven't you ever been so hungry you would just eat basically anything that was put in front of you?
Probably, but that's what I mean. Like I can't fathom it. Like being there, having to eat a sea turtle.
Yeah.
Like that is disgusting.
From things I've read about the people on these kind of trips, they end up getting so hungry that they are looking forward to it. The Bounty mutiny on the Bounty, you may recall, 100 years earlier than this, or a little under 100 years earlier than this. And the mutineers take over the ship and they put Captain Bligh and the crew that are loyal to him in a longboat and send it off. They then sail from effectively Tahiti to Australia in an open boat. It's an amazing journey. But on the way, obviously they're starving. They manage to catch some birds and stuff like that. But when they first get to the islands, the outer islands at Australia, in the Whitsundays or something, And they go onto the beach. They literally grab birds and start eating them like without having. They're just absolutely devouring these
Oh, my
birds
goodness.
straight away, like eating crabs, just picking crabs up and chewing them up. That's
Well,
how hungry they are.
Another story was a similar kind of thing. People had to charter a yacht from Sydney to Brisbane or something, and it sunk.
Oh,
And so they were in a lifeboat.
yeah.
But they were so thirsty.
Yes.
They started to drink the seawater.
Yes.
And went crazy.
Crazy. Yes.
Like crazy. It is a wild story. No crime.
When was this? When was this one?
Like in the 80s, I think.
Really?
Yes. I listened to it on a different podcast, Just the Gist, which doesn't go anymore, but it was one of the most crazy stories. But it was because they were so thirsty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, so that's what happens here. They do manage to catch a bit of rainwater, but eventually they run out of food and water, and they are getting desperate. So we're into sort of the 20th.
So how many? Oh, yeah.
There's 4 of them, 23rd,
how many
24th of
days?
July. How many days? So they get into the boat on the 5th of July. So we're now at the 25th of July or 23rd. You're about 20 days, 2 weeks, bit over 2 weeks. And all they've had to eat is 2 tins of turnips and a turtle and nothing really to drink.
Between 4 men.
Between 4 men.
Yeah.
So they start to talk about maybe somebody needs to. The standard procedure, it seemed to be, is you would draw lots. Whoever got the short straw, as it's called, would then be killed and the others would eat them.
Is that where that phrase came from, or were they?
Draw the short straw. You're drawing lots. Anyway, so that's discussed, but they don't do anything about it. Now, meanwhile, Richard Parker, the cabin boy, has drunk seawater.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Oh.
And he then goes into what they think is a coma.
Bad.
He's lying on the bottom of the boat. The others, get this, they're so thirsty, they drink their own urine.
But I've heard that before.
Sure.
I mean, I say it like it's acceptable.
Like, yeah.
No, but like that to me is not as shocking.
No.
Yeah.
So the 3 of them, so this is Dudley, Stevens and Brooks, then discuss, drawing the lots, killing someone. There had been a discussion while Richard Parker was still cognizant, but no decision had been reached. I think they then start to discuss, well, maybe we just kill Richard Parker since he's lying on the bottom of the boat and seems, unable to, and he's going to die.
He's not going to say no.
He's not going to say no. Brooks says he doesn't want any part of that.
Right.
So Dudley and Stevens have a discussion at night about how they're probably going to kill Parker in the morning. Next morning comes, they say, we're going to kill Parker. Brooks says nothing. He doesn't agree. He doesn't disagree. He just sits there.
How are they planning to kill him?
Yeah.
Okay.
They get a pocket knife and they stab it into his jugular vein.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, if they want the blood, that was stupid, wasn't it?
Well, maybe they collected the blood. I don't know. But anyway, apparently he woke up when they did that.
Oh, my God.
And said something like,
person.
yeah, and said something like, what? It was me.
Okay, so obviously cutting someone's throat is literally not an effective way.
Well, they just stabbed it into his jugular vein. Anyway, I mean, we probably should interview a doctor if we're going to talk about how.
No, we don't want to give any advice.
Yeah.
The poor boy.
Anyway, so then they all eat. The people who eat most are Dudley and Brooks, interestingly.
Oh.
Stevens struggles really to do it. This is what this is what Dudley said. I can assure you I shall never forget the sight of my 2 unfortunate companions over that ghastly meal. We all was like mad wolves who should get the most, and for men, fathers of children, to commit such a deed, we could not have been in our right reason.
No.
Yeah, isn't that?
I do wonder, would I rather just quietly slip into unconsciousness than eat another human?
Yeah. Oh, are you quietly slipping into unconsciousness? I mean, you're baking in the sun every day. You're probably freezing at night. You are.
I like to think of it that way as the option. That is a big step to take to eat a human.
Yes, that is a big step. So that is on the 25th of July. Within a couple of days, they are picked up by a passing German ship.
Oh.
And can you imagine, I have actually seen descriptions of the people, not in this case, but in another case I might talk about, who are on the deck when they pull these lifeboats up to the side where there's been cannibalism and what they see and how horrible it is. Yeah, be an incredibly brutal scene. Anyway, so the Germans pull them. P.S. It seems that everybody except the prosecuting authorities in England is totally understanding of what these guys have done. And so they don't seem to get any shade from the Germans who pull them on board, and they are dropped off a week or so later at Falmouth in England, and they immediately, like good sailors, go straight to the customs house, because when a ship sinks, you immediately have to give a report, and in the course of giving that report, they are very frank and describe exactly what happened.
Okay, but so the Germans may not have known that they stabbed poor cabin boy in the neck.
They mightn't have asked him. Yeah, but
they might have thought he just died, and they took advantage of that fact.
Sure.
Which is different.
Yeah. So this is the 1880s. We'll look at in a second a couple of cases, well, more than that, of that are quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was... Dudley says, I thought I was protected by the customs of the sea. He said his reasons for just telling everyone, yeah, absolutely, we just ate the kid. He said he thought he was protected by the customs of the sea.
So if you're out to sea, you can do what you like?
No, not you can do what you like, but effectively necessity is a complete defense to murder. You are entitled to kill somebody and eat them if you are starving to death and with no, hope of or no possibility of or no real possibility of rescue.
Okay.
So while they're giving their statements, the local police officer hears what they're saying. The local Bobby, the sergeant hears what they're saying and says, oh, this sounds odd. I better report it. Reports it up the line to the Board of Trade, interestingly. Board of Trade says, not sure, passes it on to the Home Secretary. Home Secretary says, we need to arrest these people. And so they are arrested. And
three of them?
All three. And they're arrested and they're put in, they're held on remand, but only for a couple of days. So they appear before the magistrate, having been arrested, thinking that the magistrate's just going to wave them through. The magistrate says, oh, no, we better, make sure we get a proper ruling on this from the Attorney General or the Home Secretary. And so waits. Eventually it comes back that they're going to be prosecuted. Now, they are allowed out then. They're given, they don't spend any time in custody after that. They're allowed out on bail pending their trial. And they're pretty confident that they're going to win their trial.
Right.
The problem with it is that the question of whether the defence of necessity, whether you are allowed to kill someone else to save your own life, hadn't really been answered in law. It was still a grey area, and the Attorney General and the Home Secretary thought, well, this is our opportunity to put this matter to rest. We can get a legal precedent, which we want. So I'll give you the law as it stood at the time in the earlier cases. So there was a 17th century case, so 1600s, St. Christopher's case it's called. So it's from the Caribbean. Some 7 Englishmen get into a boat for an overnight voyage between islands. They're leaving from St. Christopher Island, hence the name of the case. They're blown out to sea. They're lost for 17 days. During that time, they cast lots to see who would sacrifice their own life. So they weren't going to kill them, sacrifice their own life. And the man who suggested that they draw lots to sacrifice life, he was the one who drew the short straw.
Oh, you wouldn't read about it.
I know. 1 in 7 chance. The captain actually said, no, mate, I'll step in for you. And he said, no, my idea, I'll do it. So I think he must have shot himself or something. Anyway.
Oh, Lord.
They all then ate him and survived and were put on trial when they got back to St. Christopher's. But the judge pardoned them. So there's no real finding. It's sort of at a trial level, not at an appeal level. So it doesn't really set a precedent. The judge pardons them on the basis of inevitable necessity.
So they were convicted and then pardoned?
Yeah. It just says that they were pardoned.
Okay.
By the judge.
For inevitable necessity.
Necessity, yeah.
Okay. And how long after he sacrificed himself were they rescued, do you know?
17 days, I think they were out all up.
Okay.
So,
right.
yeah. I mean, you're going to die of starvation.
So that's a bit
within-
different because he did kill himself.
Yeah, so this idea of whether you draw lots or whether you just pick somebody and kill them does become a bit of a well, that is the real dividing line, I think.
So
between-
really the only charge in that case would have been the cannibalism.
Yes, but you could argue the defense of necessity for cannibalism, you see.
Ah, okay.
So you could validly say,
All right.
yes, I was guilty of cannibalism or interference with a corpse, we'd call it nowadays, I think, but you would be covered by the defense of necessity.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so then there's the case of the Essex, which you mightn't recognise the name, but you might know the movie that came out a couple of years ago called The Heart of the Sea, starring Chris Hemsworth.
No.
Oh, wow, okay.
I love Chris Hemsworth.
So I think this was just after the first Thor and before he became stratospherically famous. But
Right.
anyway, he plays one of the characters in the story of the Essex. So this is 1820 and it's an American case.
Mm-hmm.
A whaling ship goes out whaling and they leave and they're supposed to be gone for 2 years. They do these massive trips from Nantucket in America and they go to South America and then into the South Pacific. And they end up being, well, a long way as it turns out, but one of their destinations could have been Tahiti. So that's how sort of far away they are.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting case because they go to this whaling ground in the middle of nowhere, and it's called a whaling ground even though there's no ground, it's all water. And their ship is attacked by a sperm whale.
Wow.
Yeah, big giant sperm whale, as long as their boat. I think this was an 80-foot boat.
Oh my goodness.
Rams their whaling ship twice.
Oh.
And damages it so badly that it sinks.
Sinking.
It actually, it's sinking. It takes a while to sink because they managed to get away in 3 lifeboats with some provisions and water. And
Did the whale just let them go?
the whale there just swam off.
Done his job?
Yeah. Well, there's been lots of conjecture about why the whale, because it's the only occasion ever recorded of a whale attacking a ship.
Really?
Yeah. And it was used.
Any whale?
Anyway.
Even a killer whale?
Oh, sorry. No, killer whales have been attacking ships off the coast of Spain. Haven't you been seeing that? They've been
Well, I wondered if
chewing the rudders off them and
I had
headbutting
heard that
them.
wrong. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
well,
killer
not
whales.
killer whales.
All right.
Yeah, and Herman Melville was inspired by the story to write Moby Dick.
Oh,
Yeah,
from that case?
from that case. Yeah, case of the Essex.
Isn't that amazing?
So what happens is the 3 boats of the Essex are all cast adrift. Two of the boats have navigational equipment. One of them doesn't. So it's just got to keep the other 2 boats in sight.
Right.
Inevitably, a storm comes. The boat with no navigational equipment is lost.
Uh-huh.
It's found later washed up on the shore of an island with four skeletons in it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they...
Yeah, that's why I don't go to sea.
Then the other 2 boats were separated but had different things happened. In one of the boats, people died of natural causes and were then eaten. In the other boat, they then had to draw lots and
To kill themselves?
or
to be killed?
Well, it's whoever draws the short straw gets killed. And then
Okay, so it wasn't like the first one where they sacrificed themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
So they then drew lots. One guy draws a short straw, he's shot and eaten. Well, the survivors of those boats are all eventually rescued and they get back to Nantucket, and the question is whether they should be put on trial, and they are not, on the basis that they would have a defense of necessity.
Okay.
So that's the 1820s.
And that's when they've killed.
Well, yeah, I think maybe they actually killed the guy, although he'd drawn the short straw.
Yes.
And that was the agreement.
Yeah. But, I mean, that is a next step along in defending conduct, because the first one, it was just that they ate the guy who killed himself. Now they've killed and ate.
Yes.
Okay.
So then we get to the 1840s, another American case, US versus Holmes, it's called. And this was really the state of the law when the Dudley and Stevens are sort of being tried in the 1880s. It's an American case. Mm-hmm. And again, no real clear precedent. Holmes is he's one of the deck hands on a boat that hits an iceberg and sinks. And everyone jumps into a lifeboat, which is a pretty big lifeboat. It's overloaded. So him and some of the other crew members say, guess what? We can't all be on this lifeboat. And they there must have been a lot of people on the lifeboat, 14 to 16 people overboard.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And obviously they hit an iceberg, which means they're in a very cold part of the world. And so they're throwing them into pretty cold water. To their death. Oh, yeah, I don't think any of those people survived. Anyway, so they get back to where, the United States, wherever they were heading. Or I think, they're picked up and rescued. And he's then put on trial for murder. And again, so this isn't...
Just the captain?
Yeah, Holmes. So it's not a necessity case in that we're starving to death and the necessity is us...
We want to eat you.
Eat the person. This is necessity. If we don't throw people off, the lifeboat will sink and we'll all die.
Okay.
So it is necessity, but slightly different facts. In the end, the judge... what happens... So they don't really, this is what the judge instructs the jury. So again, it's not a clear precedent that necessity is
valid.
Yes, because the judge tells the jury they don't have to consider it. The judge says, before the protection of the law of necessity can be invoked, a case of necessity must exist. The slayer must be faultless. He must owe no duty to the victim. Actually, the jury do convict Holmes, but he's sentenced to 6 months imprisonment and a $20 fine. 1841, but it's only manslaughter. It's not murder.
Okay.
And
because of a duty of care.
Well, I don't know, because the difference is obviously intention to kill. And if you're throwing someone in frigid water,
intent.
You know that they're going to die.
It doesn't matter if your intent was based on altruistic motives. You still have the intent. We say motive is different to intent.
Yeah. Yeah. So
interesting.
So he's convicted, pardoned.
$20 fine.
$20 fine.
Although,
it's probably a lot in 1841,
yeah, okay.
1842. He's pardoned by President John Tyler. I didn't even know there was an American president, John Tyler, but
I am not across all of the American presidents.
No. So it seems that necessity might be a defense if you satisfied what the judge said, that the slayer, the defendant, must be faultless and must owe no duty to the victim.
So maybe that's saying you can't raise necessity to criminal negligence.
Sure. It sounds also to me like it's saying if you kill the person, then you're at fault. But if you draw straws and they get the short straw, you're not at fault. You can argue necessity.
Yeah, because that was a bit arbitrary, picking which ones to throw overboard.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they worked out who was going to go overboard. Probably the people closest to the side. That's
maybe it was dependent on the cost of their ticket.
That's right. First class passengers, you're good. Steerage.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Overboard. Yeah. Then there was another one. This happens a lot, apparently. James Archer, 1874, so a decade before.
Getting closer. Yeah.
Yes. He takes charge of a lifeboat after his boat sinking, 7 survivors. Archer and 4 of the survivors, so 5, picked up sometime later, absolutely enough later that they had been starving, and they admitted that they killed and butchered at least one of the other people on board.
How do all of these shipwrecked people have the tools necessary to butcher a human?
That's right. Well, I suppose people are carrying penknives or pocket knives, or I don't know.
I think that would be a tough task.
It would. So he ends up being dropped off in Singapore, and the Singaporean Attorney General, it's a colony of the English, so it's Thomas Bradell. He writes to the Board of Trade in London saying, "What do we do?" And the governor of Singapore, based on what he's heard from the Board of Trade, says, "No, we need to arrest this person, have a judicial inquiry into it, have some kind of a trial." And they then start into a trial, but they abandon it because of questions about jurisdiction.
That's lucky.
So, yeah, because jurisdiction in terms of it being a ship and who has jurisdiction over it.
The law of the sea.
Law of the sea, and the British love the law of the sea. So they end up, that case never went anywhere. So again, no clear precedent, although they did begin a prosecution.
Okay.
So
For murder?
Yeah. It seems James Archer was pretty upfront about it. Yeah, just murdered him and butchered him.
Okay.
We were all starving. What did you want me to do? And again, it seems like, so Dudley, when he's picked up, he's like, yeah, sure, it's the customs of the sea, I'm protected. And I suspect, looking at these cases, when these people are absolutely upfront about what happened, that's what these sailors believed. If you are cast adrift in a boat,
that's the option.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, could you not just cause yourself to bleed and
drink your own blood. I suppose it'd be like drinking your own urine. It's a bit circular.
Not that I think blood would slake your thirst.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Anyway, gross.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
That's all right. So they, back to 1884, in November, Dudley and Stevens and Brooks. Oh, that's right. So at the committal hearing, the prosecutor's worried because the only evidence he's got is the statements of the three men
who were there.
And if they're the defendants, they don't have to give evidence.
Oh, yeah.
So he's concerned.
But they had what was left of the cabin boy.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, he was all gone.
Well,
they just threw his bones overboard.
Or when the Germans picked them up, they got rid of them.
Oh,
I don't know.
True. Okay.
But again, I mean, saying he was eaten, proving he was eaten, doesn't prove who the killer was.
True.
So the prosecutor's a bit worried, and then decides that what he needs one of them to turn state's evidence. So it's announced that at the I think at the committal hearing, they say we're withdrawing against Brooks.
Well, he must have spoken.
Yeah, it's not clear whether he did or not, but I mean, if you're standing in court and they say they're withdrawing the charges against you, they actually say so he can be a witness for the prosecution.
Awesome.
He's like, woohoo.
Interesting that he ate the most.
Well, as much as Dudley.
Mm.
Stevens didn't have a stomach for it.
I actually don't know that I'll be able to have dinner tonight after this.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little queasy.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right.
We should give him a trigger warning about that. So they run the trial, and it's some pretty big hitters. They got QCs on both sides. So prosecution guys are QC. Defense is a QC because they do a subscription for the Dudley and Stevens, the 19th century version, of doing going on Facebook and what do they call those pages on Facebook where you?
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe. It's just
That's
a 19th
not just
century,
on Facebook.
isn't it? Sorry, I need to look
It's
at
just
Facebook.
a website.
Okay, is it a GoFundMe? There you go, advertising GoFundMe. I'm not suggesting anyone does it, but certainly they did the 19th century version, and they had a subscription, and they raised enough money for him to hire a QC and a junior barrister, or both of them too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Milat should have done that.
I know. Well, he had a Silk and a junior. That's from our Ivan Milat episode.
Sorry, yes.
It's a bit of a ding-dong of a trial. The problem is the trial judge is pretty, again, Dudley and Stevens from the start.
Right.
So the Attorney General decides they want to get a precedent, and that precedent is that necessity is not a defence. So the Attorney General's position is we want them convicted.
Okay.
The trial judge that they get is of the opinion that they should be convicted. And can I say the trial judge and the Attorney General seem to be a bit annoyed, and the Home Secretary annoyed, because the population is in favour of Dudley and Stevens. They want them to be acquitted. And
How do they know that?
Well, what's reported in the paper, presumably.
Right.
How politicians always know take the temperature of the population through the newspaper.
Okay.
So the trial judge has this idea that he will ask the jury for a special verdict. So he will say to the jury, all I want you to do is set out the facts that you find, and I don't want you to give an answer. I want you to say, we don't know what the result of those facts we found is, and that's a special verdict. Now, although they were technically allowed, there hadn't been a special verdict since 1784, so 100 years earlier.
How are they allowed to do that?
Well, this is part of the English common law, special verdict. The jury could find the facts and then
find the facts proved,
and then say, whatever the court decides what the legal consequences of those facts are.
That is so bizarre.
Isn't it? A bit odd. I don't mind it, actually. I wish they'd do that nowadays. It's a bit like a demurrer. I don't want to bore everyone, but you can, it's not used very often, but you can, if you're the defendant, accept all of the facts of the prosecution, but argue you're not guilty.
Yeah.
Because there's some legal trick
explanation.
Yeah. Not only does the judge run the case like that, when it gets to the jury, tell them that that's what he wants them to do, but he pulls out, here's one I prepared earlier, whips out the special verdict that he's already done up.
For this case?
And just reads it out to him, just says, not if you agree. They don't even leave the courtroom. He just reads out the first line. Everyone agree? Yep. Reads out the next one. You all agree? And they just all nod.
Had they listened to the evidence?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's the end of the case, and they listen to all it, but the judge just reads to them what he thinks they should find, and they all go,
being, saving time.
Wow. Anyway, he is very satisfied with himself, but he realizes later that he's got it wrong. Again, some quirk of maritime law. He described the ship as a yacht and not a ship or something, and then that meant that there was problems with the jurisdiction of the court because of maritime law and all this kind of stuff. So that becomes a bit of a legal hurdle. What he does is he then just amends the special verdict after the case.
Very wise.
That all comes out, anyway. So
did the conviction stand?
Well, what the point of the special verdict is, then it's sent to a judge, a bench of 5 judges to make the decision.
Oh, okay. So not the trial judge.
No. I mean, I won't go into it, but eventually they, after all of these legal wranglings and arguments, they eventually find, and it was always pretty clear they were going to, that necessity is not a defence, and both of them get convicted. What the judges say is that, their justification for saying necessity is not a defence is based on legal precedent.
No.
But, as we've looked at those cases, what legal precedent, they're all a bit unclear. And ethics and morality is the other one they say. And that's an interesting one.
I always think morality is tough because whose morals are you basing that on?
Well, the Bible, it says something, doesn't it, about better that you sacrifice your own life than another.
I know, but why is the Bible the morals that we apply?
Well, the Bible is, I think because this is a Judeo-Christian, philosophical base from which we come. And don't forget, in Dudley and Stevens, which we name-checked at the start of this, the judge in that case says, what does the Bible say?
Love thy neighbour.
Love thy neighbour. Then that means that the legal principle is...
But I think that's problematic to assume that they are the correct morals to apply.
Well, it might be nowadays. I don't think it was in the 19th century.
Probably not.
So, and this is coming from England, which actually has its own religion, the Church of England.
Yes.
Which is a Christian religion.
Which was only created so he could get divorced. Henry VIII.
Henry VIII, yes. Hundreds of years earlier, though, so they had a long tradition of it.
Yes.
Anyway, so they both get convicted, but this whole time they haven't been in jail. The whole time they have been allowed out. They've been out and in the community. So they get convicted. They're put in jail. They spend a very short amount of time in jail, and then they are...
Pardoned.
Oh, sorry. I think they get the death penalty. It's then commuted because it's murder.
Oh, yes.
So that's then commuted. They're put in jail, but are out of jail within a couple of years. They're just...
Is it years? I thought maybe it was only months.
I'm just trying to quickly have a look. But they're pardoned. Queen Victoria pardons them.
Yes.
And I think that was the idea all along.
So they could have the legal precedent without the punishment.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes. It is one of those cases that you remember because of the facts.
Yes.
But also it is still one that we cite to...
Well, it does come up. So there was a case of the conjoined twins where one of the twins was terminally ill, and if that twin died, the other twin would die. And they... am I not getting the facts right?
Well, there are 2 different conjoined twin cases.
Oh, really? I was talking about the Queensland one.
Okay, so that was the Nolan case.
Nolan.
But there was Re A.
Oh, that's the English case.
The English case.
Yes.
And so in Re A, where they needed the surgery, it would inevitably kill the weaker twin.
Yes.
But good prognosis for the stronger twin.
Yes.
They relied on the defence of necessity.
Yes.
And it was because the parents couldn't bring themselves to consent because they loved them both.
And so it goes to a court, isn't it? Because the doctors performing the operation want the court to make a decision before they perform the operation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was going to be killing that
because
baby.
The doctors didn't want to be charged with murder.
And so they said on the basis of emergency, necessity. That was valid. It wasn't going to be an unlawful killing.
Yeah.
And so that was relied upon in Re A. But in Nolan's case...
Yes. So it was the same scenario.
Same scenario. But the court here didn't rely on emergency or necessity as the defence. They talked about the competing duty of care
Yes.
to the two little babies.
Yes.
And said that the duty of care to the sicker twin meant you would be trying to preserve their life at all costs.
Yes. But
whereas, you know,
but they granted it in Nolan, didn't they? And they performed the operation.
Well, the parents consented in that case.
Right.
So I think I think there was discussion in that case that it should have been better raised as the defense of emergency rather than medical necessity.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, you would know that little twin that they saved went on to have a great little life, you know, which may have been lost if they had tried to save them both.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, it's definitely still got a place.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, not anymore in relation to people being lost on the high seas.
Not so much.
Because obviously we have EPIRBs now and much better ways to find people.
Yes.
And obviously people are not using the oceans like they did because everyone flies everywhere.
Well, and I would just make sure I had a little go-to bag for my lifeboat.
But how long do you know? You don't know how long.
Even in 5
you can
seconds, just grab it.
Yeah, but how much? Water's really the crucial thing.
Oh, I'm sure there's things you can get that will turn into water or something. I just don't
Powdered
go
water. Just have water.
Just don't go on long boat trips.
Yeah, well, that's
fly.
right. Well, we can do that nowadays because we can fly.
Yes.
So that's Dudley and Stevens. So if anybody hears that name, they hopefully will know exactly what the case is about now, and a very interesting one. And the defence of necessity still very valid, and the case still comes up.
Yes. I saw a thing today that said the songs from the 2000s are now as long ago as the songs from the 80s were in the 2000s. And that just made me feel really old.
Yeah, I know. Well, I join you there. I feel old. All right. Thanks, Lizzie.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please rate and review or like and subscribe. It all helps Lizzie and I keep this podcast going. If you're interested in clips, you can look at them on Instagram and TikTok. Just search for Justice Matters Pod. See you next episode.